Hi everyone, my name is Javier Cabral, representing Haiku Universe. I'm an entrepreneur, artist, and painter, and I have the ultimate blessing to be in front of my mentor. She's an incredible entrepreneur. She owns multiple clinics. She's a great artist, fashion designer. She's done so much, and she has so much wisdom. And I'm just filled with so much gratitude and blessings to be in front of her. And I'm really excited to talk about this podcast. I'm really focusing on mental health. You know, in the Haiku universe, we have different sections. We talk about investing, we talk about sports, we talk about art, culture, and this is the most important one to me. This is the one that's most closest to my heart, to be honest, and it's about mental health. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Tamara Chanel. I'm so excited to be here. It's super awesome. If there's anything that you would like to share before we begin, the floor is yours.
No, we're gonna just jump into it. I'm excited about doing this. You know, I think this will be a really great thing and to bring awareness to the topics that, we think that need to be shared more often.
For sure, and I definitely agree. Topics like this need to be shared, I also think it's very important to you know, get more people that look like us.
Right. Representation.
Yeah, that representation to talk about these things is very difficult for us to talk about
Right.
in our community.
Right.
Especially, you know, you being a woman, me being a man.
Right.
Being able to just share that kind of relationship to the world and
Right.
knowing that we can always learn from each other.
Right.
And you can always reach out to people that are in your community to learn from them as well. And you don't have to reach out to other cultures is super important. Even though it's great to bring everyone in that diversity,
Right.
but makes it a little bit more special to me.
Okay.
And before we begin, I do want to talk about what kind of led me here and inspired me here. This may be a bit of a trigger warning. Just letting you know, this could be a trigger warning for a lot of people who've been through things like losing someone to suicide. So a couple years ago, my father, I lost him to suicide. And that was kind of like the most heartbreaking thing that I've ever been through. You know, usually when a parent dies, it's usually for a disease, old age, or things like that. And I feel like you're able to kind of understand a little bit. But once you wake up and someone's gone and you don't even know what happened or what led them to be in that position, it's really heartbreaking and it's really hard to deal with. So hopefully this conversation that we're about to have right now can help a lot of people get through that. And you know, my father, he was someone who was a photographer. He's someone who always built things with his hands. For like a carpenter type of person. He was an artist. He was always the life of the party. He was DJing, doing all the photo shoots, making everyone laugh. That's kind of the person that he was. Unfortunately, when I was around 5 years old, he lost his mother. His photography shop burned down. His factory went down. My parents went through a divorce at that time, and he went through a very difficult stage because when people are kind of successful and they make money, they make terrible decisions sometimes when it comes to drugs and substance abuse. And when everything came down for him, he didn't have like the strength to overcome that substance abuse, and I believe he relied on it more. And you know, over time, it was very difficult for him, and that's kind of the way that I analyze the situation. Just so many things that happened to him, so many high expectations for him because of the life that he lived before. And when everything went down, he kind of just someone who was trying to hold it all together, and unfortunately couldn't. And that's why, for the first conversation, even though we're going to go through different topics about mental health in the future, this conversation right here, I really want to focus on just kind of informing people about what addiction really is. A lot of times when people think about addiction, they're thinking about someone who may be mentally weak that can't support themselves and they feel really sorry for them. And, you know, a lot of people kind of abandon them in a kind of a way. And I want to really change what addiction is, and I hopefully through at the end of this journey we can make an impact. And you know, I don't want people to think that people going through addiction are weak. I want them to know that they're actually one of the strongest people around, because once you overcome that level of pain and things that you go through, I think something beautiful happens afterwards. That's what I really, yeah, that transformation happens afterwards. And that's what I want to help people do, is transform their mindsets and things like that. So real quick, just from an understanding, what is addiction? Like when you think of addiction, what is that?
Textbook is like chronic relapse disorder. It's being addicted to a substance, and typically people look at that as like alcohol, drugs, but I always say addiction is bigger than just alcohol and drugs. People are addicted to food. People are addicted to sex. People are addicted to being a workaholic. Um, Everybody has a level of addiction. It just depends on what's neurologically or, environmentally or even emotionally is happening that, kind of creates more of an attachment to whatever that disconnect is. Um, from a holistic perspective, I look at, addiction as, our disconnect from self. So it's the white noise for us. So 9 times out of 10, that's somebody finding what that distraction or that white noise is in their life that they lean into so they can get away from the reality of whatever they're trying not to deal with, versus it just being, that connection. I always say the disconnect from self is always going to create discord. The disconnect from God even is going to create that discord or that, that white noise in our life. And that's what creates, the choices that we make, that's so-called in the gray area. So, but yeah.
Yeah, it's really powerful. That disconnect itself is sort of like, when I took psychology courses, it was something like cognitive dissonance. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So like when people are in that state, I guess it kind of triggers.
Right, because it's you got to look at like addiction. What I've noticed is something that gives you that temporary high, and that can come from so many things, but it really breaks down to that hormone being boosted within ourselves that gives us that rush of it makes me feel good in this moment. And what am I gonna do? Try to create that serotonin boost or whatever boost that dopamine boost, at that moment continuously. I want to keep chasing that. So that could be from anything. There's so many levels of addiction that we don't talk about, like from entrepreneurship. It's a dope book that I just got. Leaderships are like addicts or something like that. And I'm like, when you're reading it, it's so true because it's still that chasing of this rush, this high that you keep trying to get. And sometimes you're making choices that really don't align with yourself, who you truly are meant to be. And it's like you're kind of like just trying to figure out, how do I keep getting to that one point, that one thing that made me feel comfortable or feel, what I thought was my highest self. And it might not be the truth. So
that's powerful. And like, how does that happen over time? Like, let's say, like maybe someone goes through something difficult, and they're like, man, like, I'm gonna just stay home and eat a bunch of chocolate or some ice cream, right?
That fixation.
Right. Even though it's not like heroin or alcohol, but it still affects them. People can get addicted to the sugar and things, but like, what does it look like when it develops over time? Like, how does it start and then?
It becomes more of like, this is a way of my life. Like the same way that you get up and brush your teeth. There's people that's gonna get up and the first thing they do is looking for, how do I get high? How do I, fix or numb, what I don't want to feel right now. So I always look at it like over time is your coping mechanism. And once again, like my biggest thing is kind of to dispel the myth of addiction, because it is about looking at it from a different lens. When you think of addiction, people automatically, think about Pookie. You know what I'm saying? Like you automatically thinking about somebody strung out and looking a certain way. But, we don't take it in our own personal lives. Like the reason that you can't stop drinking soda, or the reason that you can't stop, get ingesting sugar. You know what I'm saying? It's still that what chemically is happening and shifting in the body to make you feel good. And it's like we're gonna, as human nature, we're gonna chase what is gonna make us feel good, what makes us feel better. Now over time, it will override, our senses to be like, well, should I, sell my child just so I can get this high, or should I, quit my job, or should I put my life in danger in order to do, whatever this is that I'm chasing. And that's the hard part, is because when you do see it at that point and you have these conversations with people who have been addicted for like 10, 20, 30 years, it's wanting to quit, but not really understanding how. Not really understanding, they can have all the tools in the world, but it's still like having to like really reprogram and shift their like make a conscious interruption in their life to make them actually get to the point where they can actually break the addiction. Because if you're not gonna stop doing something that you've been doing for 15 years, you're not with just a class, not with just a therapy session. It has to take like a real conscious interruption in that person's life to show them how to move and act and operate differently from a different frequency. So now you can start reprogramming and ingraining a different sense of behavior into them versus the other dynamic.
No, that's really powerful. And after years, something that really stuck with me, because when I think about someone going through addiction, or when I thought about my father even going through addiction, I thought it was like, you're doing something, just stop.
Right.
Like
why you
stop.
Can't just give up. You see how it's destroying your life, just stop.
And especially like looking at someone like me being a child, and I'm a new father now, and like I love my son as much as possible, right? And like I think I made a mistake when I was younger, because my father, he came to me really drunk one time when I was like 15, 16 years old, crying, and he was trying to explain to me that his father wasn't there, and it just didn't help him communicate as much. And me being like not understanding, being naive, I told him like, stop, I don't want to hear it. I want you to stop doing drugs, stop drinking, and then we can have this conversation. Right? And I think that's something that I kind of regret. And the reason why I regret it is because you showed me this book. It was the
Biology of Desire.
The Biology of Desire, right? And when I read that book, it really like touched my heart in a way, because I learned about the wiring, right? And like when you start to consume these substances or whatever it is over a period of time, not only like are you doing it for your high, but your brain is actually reconstructed and rewired.
Right, it's rewiring and it's reprogramming to memorize that this is what we have to do in order to get this same outcome.
Right.
Yeah.
Why is that? Like just to go a little bit more in depth into it, like what is the brain trying to do that I guess is trying to make it consistent with?
You got to think the brain operates off of patterns. So we understand that the brain is gonna like imprint in us what works. Like, oh, we know that if we do X, Y, and Z, it gets this result, right? So it's gonna create that memory in that. I love one of the doctors that I was studying from. They said it's almost like a record. So it creates this pattern, and then maybe there's something that creates a deeper groove in the record that you're playing. So every time that you get to that groove, it's gonna it's gonna do this thing and repeat you right back. So it's gonna be like it's jumping you back to the same point, the same pain point that creates that same outcome, that same dynamic. The brain is an amazing tool, but it's like you have to have the tools and the resources around you in your journey, no matter where you are, whether it's addiction, coaching, whatever. You gotta have those tools and resources that help you get past the thing that's ingrained in you. Because there's so many things in our behavior that is like imprinted in us. And it could be from conditioning from our childhood, from society, or something that we discovered on our own, through our own journey. And now it's like that's embedded us that, oh, if I do this, it gives me this result. And that's how it's gonna work. So naturally, even not on the brain wiring, your body, think about you driving home. You done drove that same thing 50 million times.
Right.
Now you're just doing it on autopilot.
Right.
That's how the brain is on, it's putting you on autopilot at this point.
Yeah, sometimes my sinking takes me home,
Bless it. But, like that's the dynamic. Is like you have to like really look at things that we do in autopilot.
Right.
It's the same way for them. It's going to be ingrained and embedded in them to do this on, like I know that this is what I need to do in order to get this result. Period. So until you break that, and help start to rewire, the dynamics that create this outcome or this craving, right? Then it's gonna be really hard. And they can literally be, physically in pain, like ill with disease, everything, and still don't know how to like just stop. That's like the hardest thing, and that's like, sometimes I wish we had more compassion and understanding when it comes to people. Like, no, it's not that simple, bro.
Right.
It's not just as simple as, willpower. I'm gonna will my way away from these drugs and alcohol, or I'm gonna will my way away from whatever the addiction is in your life. You actually gotta, have real resources, real understanding of self, right? To be able to implement the tools that you get from your recovery classes or your therapist or whatever, to actually put this in motion. Like, no, you're not gonna just wake up tomorrow and say, oh, I'm gonna go cold turkey. And you see how many times you relapse, because once again, it's a chronic relapse disorder. It's there to, like, the addiction is the aspect of, I'm chronically gonna relapse at one point or another.
Right, and I think that connects to another really valuable point from the same book, The Biology of Desire.
Mm-hmm.
They talked about ego fatigue, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right, and that's kind of something that you're kind of approaching.
Mm-hmm.
But here it's like, you trying to do it on your own,
right?
And you're like, flip the switch, right? And that's kind of like what I was trying to talk to my dad at the point, like,
mm-hmm.
flip the switch. And I had no idea
mm-hmm.
about ego fatigue.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of want you to elaborate a little bit more. You already talked about it,
but this is the thing with ego fatigue, or just even the ideal that you can flip the switch. There's so many dynamics that play a part of why we relapse, or why, I always call it, like, even with the self-help high, when we go to these retreats or go to these seminars, and now we're on this rush and we're like, right. Oh, I'm gonna stop doing this and I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna da 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 da, and then you get back into the routine of your life.
Right.
And now nobody has ever taken the time to really address what is the real pain point in your life that has created this cycle in the first place. This is where, the real work has to take place. Because even with me working in addiction, it's like, what I've noticed is, with the programs and the different dynamics, nobody's helping you really get to the root of why. It's just like, oh, we're here now. These are things that you do when you're, that trigger comes up, right? That you're supposed to will yourself away from. And it's like, nah, but why is the trigger there? What is it about this trigger? What is it about seeing the woman with her kids playing at a park that maybe triggered you? And now you want to go numb the pain.
Right.
What is it about being in this moment, this emotional moment, that is triggering you to want to deal with it this way versus this way? And how can we put, the resources together to help you, like, navigate this different? So for us, it's about really understanding self, like really understanding who you are. I'm going to show you the roadmap to get back to, no, this is what you're prone to genetically, your birth charts, like, who are you? Why are you more, and that's, I don't even remember if that's even in our questions, but like from a, human design, dynamic, every open center we have has a addiction connected to it.
Really?
Multiple addictions.
Wow.
So if you have these areas open, there's gonna be addiction to different dynamics. You just might not be paying attention to it. And it's showing you, like, these are where you're gonna be triggered. So we'll go into, like, somebody's, blueprint and start looking at, like, oh, you got this, you got this, you got this. These are your triggers. This is your, as we say, not self thing. These are what the things that is gonna make it harder for you to will your way out of it. Versus, let me give you tangible tools tangible techniques, tangible understanding. Because when you understand, like, oh, if I don't brush my teeth, like my tooth gonna fall out, or I get this cavity and now I gotta go, to the dentist and, experience whatever, discomfort that is. Like, until you really get those, like, oh, boom, this is why this is here. This is the result. This is what you need to deal with. Now that we're dealing with it, let me show you how to move past it. This is what has to happen in therapy now. Not just, oh, let's, reveal that you feel abandoned as a child, right?
Right.
Let's not just reveal it. Let's deal with what does that look like. And now let me show you how to reparent yourself.
Wow.
So now that you're not being triggered by abandonment issues, now you're not being triggered with, daddy issues or mommy issues or whatever the case may be. And the unfortunate part is that most of everybody in the world's pain points come from childhood.
Right. That was kind of like leading into my next kind of question. But before I get into that, because I don't know if people know when they're being triggered, right? And I think that's super huge because sometimes people could just react to things and they felt like that thing. I don't know. People just have different relationships with different, and they just can't analyze it, and they feel like this is just who I am, like accept me for who I am,
right.
And they want to go off, flip the finger, keep moving
that
on.
Part.
And it's like, how does someone know when they're being triggered?
I think one thing that we gotta start back doing is getting back to self, as far as like being in tune naturally with our body and our emotions. We have done a really amazing job in society of disconnecting us from our actual body, like not really paying attention to the flutters or the heart racing or the tightness in our chest or the fact that we're breathing shallow. Like, nobody's paying attention to what your body is naturally sending you warning signs, because it's here to survive. But the body is going to tell you, like, hey, you in danger. Hey, there's a problem with this. This is bothering you. Like, we're not paying attention to that. So it has to get to a point where you're being intentional about, how am I being present in the body? This is why you've seen across the board, they've started implementing meditation in therapy. They started implementing, meditation into these, addiction programs and things, because it's teaching you to be more aware of your own stillness. And the more that we get in tune and in touch with that, the easier it is to recognize when I'm relaxed and I feel free and I'm breathing fully, versus now I'm tight and I'm shallow, I'm barely breathing, my body feels tense, and you can tell the difference. Like, I always give people a reminder, even when I'm starting like a class or something, like, give me 3, deep breaths. So you can relax and you can receive what it is that you need to hear. Because 9 times out of 10, we're walking like, so disconnected from ourselves, which is unfortunate. You can only figure out triggers when you are fully in tune and aware.
Right. That was like something that I was thinking too, right? Because like, unfortunately, a lot of people in our communities, they never really get to experience what being naturally themselves is. Yeah. And unfortunately, some people,
relaxed.
Nobody, like, not nobody, but there's just a lot of people that they never felt that.
Right. So they have fight or flight.
Exactly.
Constantly. You born into the world in fight or flight. So that's the hard part. But it's like, once you become aware, right? Whatever that is for you, I'm not even saying that you got to be in a certain level of like, oh, I'm vegan, yada, yada, yada. It's got to be, no, once I have the awareness that I'm an adult, that I got to start making decisions for myself.
Right.
Now, this is my opportunity to seek information, especially in this day and age where like information is at a fingertip. Like, I could just type, Google it.
I think the issue is though that's like there's so much information.
It is.
And there's so many people that just wake up one day and they're like, you know what, I can do this. And
right. And now they feel like they self-imposed gurus or whatever.
Because there's one thing to know the information, but the implementation of the information, right? Like how, that's like.
And I think, that's where we gotta stop thinking that we're gonna mess up, that, we're gonna fail. It has to be where it's like, no, let me not only seek the information, but let me explore what works for me. Like, I might need to go to, like, I highly recommend, not just because I have behavioral health clinics, but I highly recommend therapy to everybody because it's the same concept of you break your arm, you go into the hospital.
Right.
If you are emotionally broken, if you are mentally having you stressed out 90% of your life, you need to go to a therapist so they can give you other tools and other resources to help you, navigate your life. Even if you think that you're somewhat of a healthy person, you still should be going to therapy just to help you like talk through some of the things that you're seeing, these repetitive patterns or things that are coming up in your life cycle. I think that's what will start helping us be a little more aware of mentally what we're going through, emotionally building our intelligence, because that's a big reason why I think addiction is so prevalent in our community. It's being able to like actually start to navigate like not only who I am, but how things are affecting me. How does it affect me when I'm seeing people being murdered on social media,
which is huge, right?
Right. Like, I need to like understand that all of these things are like creating some resistance or some discord within myself. And how am I dealing with that? Because you're not gonna tell me you don't have PTSD by seeing people that look like you getting stopped at a traffic violation and now they're murdered 2 seconds later, or you're seeing like a mother of sons where I'm seeing young boys and young men being murdered daily. Like, that it starts to affect you. And you have to find ways to actually deal with it, not just talking to your homegirl who going through the same trauma, that you're going through, but actually talking to somebody who has experience to help you navigate, well, what does this make you feel like? And are you paying attention that now because of this, now you done started sheltering your children more? Now you're not giving them the freedom or you're moving from fear instead of love. So it's, a lot of things that we have to start unpacking when we're talking about how do we, acknowledge the things that trigger us. Because sometimes I think now especially things are kind of seeping through in the subconscious mind just because of, the basic tools like social media or whatever that we're using. We're not even realizing like we're low key being, trained to think or feel a certain way. What are you doing about that?
And I think you mentioned something really key is that people will go through the similar experiences and then they'll talk about it, and that's kind of like trauma bonding, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like when people trauma bond. Mm-hmm. So how do you know that, like, the difference between trauma bonding and collective healing?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Like, how do you know when you're in that situation?
When you're not coming up with a solution. I've been solution oriented my whole life. And what I notice is it's a difference when you're in the like, you're telling your girlfriend or your guy friend about an experience, and instead of y'all coming up with a solution to make you better or them better, right? We are like, girl, I've been through that too, or child, like, going into another narrative that's still kind of condoning the behavior. Instead of like, let's get to the root of why you were in that position in the first place. What can we do to like change that dynamic or that narrative in the first place? How can we deal with this? And then like, what are the solutions that we're actually implementing? I think if it's not creating solutions where you can actually see active healing, right? Then that means that we're gonna be stuck. Like, it's still that trauma bond is gonna keep you in a perpetual cycle of experiencing the same thing over and over again. How do I actually break us from that dynamic? So what solutions are we doing? How are we shifting our environment?
So I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
If okay, so maybe someone may have came to the realization like, man, like we're just talking about our problems and nothing's happening, but we just keep on talking about our problems.
Right.
But I kind of like talking about my problems, right? Like some people may like the drama. Now I'm not saying that I like it.
They like the victim.
Yeah,
the
like
victimization.
Right, like someone just like maybe they could be addicted to the idea of being a victim, right?
Yeah.
So if the person realizes they're in a situation, should they just like, what's the best thing for them to do with the relationships they have with those other people that they're trauma bonding with? Do they
stop them, break them? Like, I think we got to get used to the ideal of putting ourselves in healthy environments and normalize it. Normalize the fact, like, I'm going to address the situation. And sometimes you don't have to. If you feel like I've said something once, I've set the boundaries one time, and you still continue to bring that energy over here. Okay. You can even give them a 3 strikes you out. I don't believe in a 3 strike you out rule. And the only reason I say that is because, you know, it only takes one time for somebody to shoot you.
Right.
There ain't no 3 times. It's a one-time dynamic.
Wow.
You know? So it gotta be, you know, real firm boundaries for you if you're striving to get into a better situation. It's gotta be like, you know what? Because I love you, you know, that conversation, you know, this is what I'm striving to do in my life. You can either join me on this journey or, you know, we're going to have to go our separate ways. And it could be simple. And then you have to stand firm on it. You have to stand like in the space of, I'm not buckling, I'm not going to get weak, I'm not going to feel lonely, you know, and it's possible those emotions going to come up, but what do you want to experience more of? Like your targets, your goals, your desires have to have more of a weight than what you're experiencing at the current moment. So if you desire or, you know, want to create joy, peace, and happiness, you got to be more committed to that than that current situation. And I think that's the part that, you know, we all got to kind of get into a space of how am I disciplined, how am I committed to what I want to experience. If I say I want more joy and peace, then I gotta eliminate the things that don't create that.
Super deep. Yeah, that's super real. I think a lot of people just struggle with like, I love this person so much that I want to see them win. I want to be there when they win. And it's very difficult for people to like, you know,
cut people off. It is. But I think it's the fact that they have to want that too.
Or maybe we should change the word, right? Like cut people off. Maybe it's like freeing you.
Right. Let me set you free.
Let me set you free.
Let me set you free because I'm blocking your blessing. Yeah, but it definitely has to be that, you know, understanding of they have to want it too.
Yeah.
They got to want it just as bad as you want it for them. And if you don't see them making that forward progress or those steps to actually want it for themselves, then you got to free yourself from it and be like, okay, well, this is where they're at. And you got to be okay with some people, this is their journey. This is where they're at, what they're supposed to experience in that moment. And you can't be, what somebody was talking about, like, you can't be Jesus in their life.
Right.
Like, that's not your job. You can be you. You can operate what, you know, you have to offer. But they have to have their own connection and their own understanding and their way of navigating this. And it might not go the way that you think it's supposed to go. It might have to take something really, you know, detrimental or traumatic. And then some people never make it out of it. But that's what their journey is about this time. And you have to be okay with that.
Right.
It's really that simple.
And just for like being, to be very vulnerable about what happened with me, when my father passed away, I was at a moment in my personal career where I was performing at the best I've ever done. I was making a lot of great connections. I was looking at expansions. I was looking to do a lot of different things. And when my father passed and the way he passed, it broke me down. Like it just completely destroyed every momentum, everything that I had. I coped with it the wrong way. Went through like a year of going out, drinking, honestly, whatever people had, any type of drugs they had, I took it. It was like whatever. I went through moments where I got stopped by the police while I was drunk in my car so many times. Luckily, they never arrested me or did anything. I don't just by the blessings.
That was the angels.
Yeah, those are the angels
you.
just protecting me. Unfortunately, not everyone has that or those things like that. But I went through periods where I felt like I was gonna overdose in my car, and I couldn't stop. I just kept going and going and going. Then there was a point where I actually tried to seek therapy, right? And it just did. It didn't work for me at that moment, because they told me that at that moment I was dealing with like trauma, depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts. Like I was at a point where it's like my life was just.
You just felt you were at your rock bottom.
Yeah, I was at that serious rock bottom. And what kind of made me change is one, I was becoming a father, right? So I had to I have a son, I have to change.
Yeah.
And it was so hard to change, even though I was becoming a father. And then one day I was like, I stopped everything and I was going through extreme withdrawals about everything. And then I was like, why is this happening to me? I was crying really hard. Like I didn't get it. And then I was just thinking about why is this happening to me? And then I saw a vision of like a 5-year-old version of myself. And then I went to go talk to him, and it's like really sad. And when I was talking to him, I was like, what are you doing? Right? It was very deep. I was like, what are you doing? And he was like, I'm all alone. Like everyone left me. Like I'm by myself. And like when I was going through that, I was like, I love you. Like I'm here for you.
The inner child reparenting.
And I saw it. I don't know if you ever seen that interview with Jeezy and Neil Long, but he had a similar thing. He went deep further. He went to go play with his little self, and like he took him out. But for me, I was just like hugging my inner child. And I was just like, I'm here for you. I'm like, you're not going to be alone anymore, and things like that. I was just having that communication with that, and it was like it wasn't very long when I felt that, but that kind of put me in a position to move forward and make different progress, because I was like, it was kind of like healing myself in a way, and that comes back to what we were going to talk about earlier, those childhood, right? Like things that happen through childhood that develops over time, and you start to develop these bad habits for a child.
Yeah.
And like, 1 second. Go back to the specific question because I'm emotional right now. But yeah, so when someone's a child or you look at kids and things like that, what are signs that this person could be going into, like if something could happen in the future? Like what does it look like?
Yeah, I don't know if we can say that there's signs per se. What I can say is, how are you developing your child's emotional intelligence? It's so important. How are you having very transparent, open dialogue with your child? So that way it's not just a one-sided dynamic. You know what I mean? I think with parenting, sometimes it can be very one-sided, and you not really validating or understanding what that child is experiencing in these moments. Are you really sitting down to have like real conversation and giving them the tools to express and articulate how do they feel? Emotional wheels, if you don't have an emotional wheel in your house, get one, because it's going to help your child really develop the language that they need to be able to express the different myriads of emotions and feelings that they are going through. So you have to like really start being intentional on, how am I developing my child's emotional intelligence? Because emotional intelligence, if it's lacking, it's going to make you create certain dialogues with yourself in the future that you start to like dip into like addictions or depressions or just bad judgment and decision making, or not even trusting your intuitive self, like not trusting when the body is telling you you're in danger, right? Not trusting when the body is telling you this is good for you, right? And confusing the language of the two. So as a child, I think there's things that we have to pay attention, like how emotionally intelligent have I, equipped my child Like what tools have I really, created? And sometimes you gotta look at that, start with self. Are you emotionally intelligent? Have you really taken the time to like develop and mature emotionally the way that you should, and have clear communication and articulate conversations about how you're feeling and the different things that you're are experiencing, and then also having that ability to teach that to your children where they feel like they're being heard and their emotions are validated. And then how are you equipping them with the resources to deal with it? That's the start. That's like the bigger picture of it all. From little details though, is paying attention to why, like asking them specifically, like if they're attached to the blankie or to the passy or to that favorite toy or whatever the case may be, or you notice that when they're emotional they run into food, or like whatever that comfort is for them. Those are signs you need to pay attention to, because now you are understanding like this is something that soothes them, this is something that comforts them. Now I need to understand how to show them a different way. What am I doing to shift that conversation that they're having with themselves at this moment that makes them feel like I gotta have this blanket to comfort me? Now it goes deeper when I'm gonna always bring it back to human design, because there are aspects within our chart that says if that baby has taste as a cognition for them, then they're 9 times out of 10 gonna want something that is like food or the binky or whatever, because it's about the sensation. Their comfort comes through their mouth. Their wisdom or their information is going to come through tasting things. So you got, or touch, like those are the ones that you'll notice that they're always rubbing, or they're like come and they like things that are really soft, like they love textures.
Right.
So there's things that you can pay attention to that are naturally a part of who they are, but how are you equipping them with the information and the resources so when they need that comfort, you're finding out what is bothering you, what is creating this disconnect right now, that you feel like you need something that's external from you to soothe it. And that's where those conversations have to be had more, I think, because we autopilot as parents too, because we're so in this hustle bustle life.
Right.
Like, I just need to get things done, that we're not taking enough time to just be present. Just to be present. Just to be able to have like a really full grown conversation, with where are we at, and then how are we engaging with our children so we can pay attention to what's needed in that dynamic, so they don't have abandonment issues in the future, or they don't have like validation issues in the future. So hopefully that answers.
Yeah, that's really powerful. And also, I guess going deeper into like the development of a child and helping them become more healthy, like what can parents or like friends, when they're talking to children, what do parents and friends do, or the environment around the children do, that can negatively affect children to be tied down to these, like maybe it's food, or like it can start from a young age where they become more introverted or constricted.
Right.
And how can parents or friends better their communication with children so it helps them become more healthy?
I mean, it starts with self. Like, we can't do anything for the babies, our friends, our parents, or whoever in our life. We can't do nothing for anyone else until we get ourselves together. And sometimes that's typically what the problem is. We try to fix all these external things, and we haven't fixed ourselves. We haven't really been intentional with learning, like, how do I thrive in my environment? Am I paying attention to, this discord that I'm having in life, and how it's affecting not only just me, but my children, my mate, whoever, my friends? Like, how am I being intentional about what needs to happen with me?
Right.
Like, Does that mean I need to go get the therapy? Does that mean I need to, like, take time and, really get into the intricate details of my life and what I've created? Have I healed from everything? Or have I even started the journey to healing? Because that's most of the time, like, we want to just, skip over stuff. We want to quantum leap over, the hard parts and just jump into, like, oh, I'm whole and healed now. No, you're not. Like, you still got things that you need to, like, identify. And this is a ever-going process, but it's still things that you got to identify. But within that, once you can kind of, like, get self together, now it's like, okay, am I allowing my child to be who they're naturally here to be? Or am I putting my parents' ideology on my child? Am I putting society's ideology on my child? Because I'm tired and I'm stressed out and I just got home from a long day and I just want them to be quiet, and now I'm yelling, or now I'm frustrated, or now I'm like, making everybody sit down and be quiet and look at TV or get on the tablet, instead of dealing with, like, no, I have a highly energetic child that's super excited to be home.
Right.
And now, they're needing stimulation. How am I creating an environment that actually, feeds who this person is, these little people are, versus, like you said, constricting or restraining them. It's so important. Right. But also knowing, like, what we need too. Like, am I a person that need more, quiet time? How do I create that quiet time or those pockets of solitude, so when it's time for me to be in environments that is highly active and energetic, then I can deal with it better?
Wow.
So I think we got to have honest conversations with ourselves first, and really, know what helps us thrive first. Because if we're happy, then everyone's happy.
Right. Like, if you love yourself and you know yourself, then you won't be so worried about trying to change
or control other people. Like, you can't control what nobody else's narrative is. And I think we sometimes forget that we create the domino effect. Like, if we're happy and we're, in our best version of who we are, then it starts to rub off. It creates a domino effect. We plant little seeds and sow, this inspiration in others, just by being who we're naturally supposed to be. But, you gotta be willing and courageous enough to be authentically you. So it has to, start with self no matter what. I think if parents were taking more accountability for that, it would show more in how our children grow up and how they're, being functioning adults later on.
That's powerful. Very powerful. So just kind of like wrap this up a little bit. Now that, let's say someone's going through the issue of battling addiction or going through their journey of self-empowerment, how do they know if maybe I should be in a group therapy or maybe I should go through some individual, like, one-on-one help?
I honestly feel like you got to do both.
You got to do both.
I think the power of group therapy is that you get to hear other stories that help you see that you're not by yourself. And it's power in being able to resonate with someone else's story. Like, oh, that person been through something very similar or worse than mine, and they were able to overcome. They were able to get, to another side. And there's power in having those accountability partners too. But you also need that individual treatment so it can be individualized to you, right? Because group therapy is going to teach you a overall aspect and give you an opportunity to share, but individual therapy is going to be customized to you. Now, the issue is like what you mentioned, like when you went to therapy at a moment and you didn't feel like it was impactful, but I always, no matter if you're doing life coaching, you're doing actual therapy, behavioral health treatment, find people who are looking at it from a holistic perspective. Don't find people who are textbook.
Okay.
You don't want just somebody, you don't want somebody that's just textbook that might not have the insight or awareness to be able to help you through what you're going through. You want a holistic aspect that they're dealing with the mind, body, and the spirit.
Right.
Like you need that in order because we are dealing with all of those dynamics and faculties when we're striving to get our own, understanding. So it's like, yeah, you got to have somebody who has that awareness of how can I help you as a whole person, and not just go from, oh, you came to me because you're having this, breakdown, right? But let's look into it deeper than just what the surface is saying. Let's actually now, like at our treatment facility, we taking blood work. You go into a primary care physician. You got to go through a whole process just so we can understand who you are as an individual. So now we can customize a treatment plan that will work for you. Meditation don't work for everybody. So now I got to decide, okay, well, is this person a good candidate for coaching on how to just be still through meditation, or do I need to show them how to be still through Qigong? Or, do I have to like get them in like the sound healing room and, create a whole guided meditation that lets them go through a whole experience of healing the inner child and coming back to the present moment? Like, what actually is going to be individualized to treat that specific client? Versus the one size fit all, let me give you this textbook answer to what you just said. You know what I mean?
No, that's really powerful. That's incredible, and that's why she's so successful. Is because I've been through the experience of like, I'm going through this. This is what you're diagnosed with. Take a breath for 5 seconds, hold it in, breathe it out every time you feel some type of way.
Right.
And like little techniques like that, it just didn't solve what was going on.
And let me give you a medication.
Yeah.
Because they love giving drugs out.
Right. And my father, he was addicted to substances, but then he also got a lot of pharmaceutical substances, right? Where that was trying to help him with his depression, anxiety. And someone like that, he was also drinking while doing these things, and there would be moments where he was not even in control of himself, which is very deep. So that's why, I'm really happy to be here in this journey to learn so much from my incredible mentor. She has so much information. Where can people find you?
Everywhere. You can just put the Healing Chamber in. If you put the Healing Chamber, we pop up on Instagram, we pop up on TikTok now, I think. And a couple of other things are getting ready to come into play in the future. We actually get ready to make a big push in 2024, just because I do see the need for there to be more awareness of the whole body treatment, not just, oh, let me, diagnose you with XYZ, write you a prescription, and you on your merry way. I'm like, it doesn't work. Or let me just enroll you in this class of prevention therapy, right? Or recovery therapy, and you're on your way. No, I want you to see all the different dynamics of how is it affecting you financially, how is it affecting you spiritually, how is it affecting you emotionally, what are the things and the signs that are showing up, and then how can I show you that this actually all goes back to who you were, imprinted to be. Like, all of these were lessons, and now you just have to look at it from a different perspective. So that's kind of like now where we're at. It's like, no, we gotta like take this more abroad and actually, even show therapists how to like treat their clients from a different lens versus, the age old, Dr. Freud type perspective.
Right, and we're really excited to open up a behavioral therapist center out here in Houston.
Yep.
This is incredible. It's something that's near and dear to my heart because of what I've experienced with my own father, and honestly, I know a lot of people that have been through very similar things, and it's just a better way to help them out. So I'm really excited about this. Welcome to the Haiku universe. This is the mental health portion of it with Tamara Chanel, an incredible, amazing mentor. So like, comment, subscribe. The reason why I ended it is because I know you want more. So be on the lookout for more information.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you. Much love. Have a beautiful day.